Welcome back to Primetime. It's Mark Shu. It's Joe Shuey holding it down here. We're heading into week 11 and a crazy week 10 we had. Uh, Not the best betting week for us, Joe. I think I went 2 for 3 on my best bets. San Francisco, we ended up losing out to a missed extra point by Robbie Gould that ended up putting me under 50% for this week. But a couple rough bets out there this past week. I know I had the Cowboys. The Cowboys were rough. We had that under in the Indianapolis and Vegas game. Wasn't a bet for me. It was a best bet for you. It was a bet for me, and it was kind of rough. The only one that we really had faith in and faith in Russell Wilson not being able to score 18 points, that under 40 on Denver and Tennessee. Rough week for us, but a crazy week of football. Joe, how was your weekend?
My weekend was good. My Ravens didn't win or lose, so that was good. But man, this was an exhilarating week, mainly from the Vikings and Bills game. I don't think I've ever seen a game like that end, and I don't think we might ever see that a game like that end in our lifetime.
Yeah, the fumble in the end zone that could have just been a safety. Yeah, the fumble that could have been a safety that ended up being a touchdown. Bringing him all the way back, and then Josh Allen still being able to march down the field. We're not going to talk about the Gabe Davis catch on the sideline there. Might have been a little different outcome if we caught that one. But Josh Allen marches him right back down the field and gives him a chance to win in overtime. Didn't get it done, but man, game of the year right there. Justin Jefferson is for real. And I was talking with you all this past week about trying to figure out how to get Justin Jefferson on my team. I was very happy Saturday night to get the tweet. Adams, a first and a second, ended up doing it in a dynasty league for me. Oh, I'm so happy.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you could pull that off. That was probably the lowest side that I would take if I was the Adams guy. Or I'm sorry, if I was the guy that was given Jefferson. So I think you squeaked out a good deal there.
I think I squeaked out a great deal. Honestly, it's a contract league, so the other part of it is Justin Jefferson. He doesn't have as long a contract, but he's like 3% of my cap. So just Jefferson's 3% of my cap. I gave away Adams at 10%. Still a pretty good contract for Adams. But the first and second, I'm in win now mode. I've already got Captain Kirk as one of my quarterbacks. I showed you my trade for Lamar earlier in the week. I'm at the top right now in the rankings, and I needed to make a push. So I'm really excited. Wheels up, Justin Jefferson, fantasy wide receiver 1 here on out, and probably for the next couple of years, right?
Absolutely.
Cup might have something, or Cup. We'll talk
Chase.
about Cooper Cup too. Jamar Chase might have something to say about that, but yeah, right now it's Justin Jefferson all the way. Let's move on to Cooper Cup because we had a really rough looking ankle injury that he had. All that the force that came down on his ankle and just the way that it snapped through that that process was just a little rough. Looks like he's going to miss at least a few weeks with either a high ankle sprain or maybe a fractured tibia. Not really sure exactly how it's come out. They're thinking that it's more like an ankle sprain, but what are we looking at? Because ultimately, what is Cooper Cup coming back to? This LA Rams team has been a dumpster with everything but him, and maybe they let him back in and to play a few games. But what's the point? What's the point? He might as well get healthy for the next season.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on what situation they're in come the next couple of weeks. If they're able to make a push for a wild card spot, maybe, but I don't see it happening at this point. So I mean, I think that he ultimately, when he does come back, it's going to be close to fantasy playoffs, and I hate playing guys that are coming back from injury that late into the season because you never know what kind of production they're going to get coming off the injury with the limited snap counts and such. So for fantasy purposes, Cup for me is pretty much done for the year.
Yeah, and I think as tough as it is to say, if you don't have an IR spot, I think he's probably droppable. I'd probably be too scared to do it if I don't have any situation like that, and thank goodness. But I think if you really need to win, you've got to drop him, right? Like you've probably got to, or maybe you have a trade deadline where somebody's willing to take him for pennies on the dollar, but you've got to have a roster spot at this point.
Let me ask you this real quick, Mark. Is this a spot where Allen Robinson was droppable in many places this year in redraft? If he's on your waivers, is he your number one priority this week?
It's tough to say. I don't know if he's actually going to have that same setup that Cup has had. He's underperformed so far this year. Not really, separating the way they want. I think ultimately, it's that trust within from a quarterback and a receiver. I think Allen Robinson has always been a guy who can come down with the ball and sort of win those 50-50 balls a little bit, but not really separating the way you want him to. Either Matt Ryan is just not comfortable throwing that ball to him or what. So I don't. The comfort level here with Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford is, I think, the most valuable part of all of this, right? And because Cooper Kupp was obviously a good receiver, but the chemistry that the two of them have put forth this past year and a half has really been the thing to push it over the top. So it's hard. It's really kind of tough for me to say. I would still probably take a shot on him if he's out there, but he's still probably a little right now. As far as we're concerned, he's probably rostered in most spots. But I think I'd throw a priority on. I'd put him in my priorities. I don't know if I'd spend that much. Like, it's hard. Yeah, Wolford playing. It's not looking great right now in Ramsland. Let's just say that. Let's move into this game before it gets too late here. We got Monday Night Football. Washington's heading to Philadelphia for a night game. Philadelphia's right now favored -11, over under 43. What are our thoughts of the game tonight, Joe?
They're playing in Philly. It's a tough place to go, and I hate laying the points, but Philly at -11 would be a lean here for me. And honestly, I could see this over. I don't know. The Washington defense is all right. Philly's defense has played all right, but I don't know. These primetime games, the under is hit, but I'm tempted on the over here.
For me, I actually kind of like the under. I feel like at home, Philly's going to put the points up, but their home field is so good, Joe. Their home field is so good, and these night games, you don't understand. They've been drinking out there since 12 o'clock this morning, getting ready for this game, and they're just gonna, that fan base is electrified right now. The entire city is rallied around. Obviously, they didn't win the World Series, but they've just got a buzz going on in this city. And it's starting 100% with the Birds. It's been all around the Birds. They've been really a great team so far. I know that it was, Heineke put up a little bit of a fight in the game last time, but I think this is just a whole different beast. And unless they can really get it going on the ground, unless Washington can control this game on the ground, I can't see them having a hard time. Chase Young was not activated like some may have thought. It is a lean for me. It's not a full on bet, but I'm slowly starting to feel a lot better about this 11 points as we get closer and closer to game time here. I would say we're more likely to get like a 28 to 7 like outing. If Eagles are going to put up 28, I don't think they're necessarily going to let Washington hang around. So I'm not touching the under. I would probably just lean Eagles to win. They've been good against the spread so far, and it's slowly, I think, creeping better and better in their direction. All right, so we got 4 buys coming up this week. We got Seattle. We've got Tampa Bay, both of them coming off that game in Germany. Tom Brady's starting to maybe look a little more like his old self. Hopefully after the bye, he can pick it up. Miami and Jacksonville. And before we let these teams rest, are there any players that are coming off this bye that you're excited to see? I know one that pops off the page right now is Rachaad White having a pretty decent game. Although it looks like Leonard Fournette is not going to miss much time with that injury. We've been hearing slowly the drumbeat that Rachaad White is eventually going to be taking over this backfield. That's a guy I'm excited to see coming out of the bye. I'm really excited to see Godwin coming out of the bye off of the game he put up this week. Are there any other players on any of these teams that you feel like you're excited to see their second half kind of come out the gate?
Yeah, I mean, Travis Etienne has been hot the last couple of weeks. Had a little bit of a down game against Kansas City. They were playing from behind and were throwing a lot. But I really want to see what he does after the week of rest and come back in and see how they can incorporate him as a main piece in their offense. Because it seemed like his home run explosiveness home run hits and explosiveness were missing in that game against Kansas City. So I want to see how they came back in the game. And looking at Miami, Jeff Wilson has had 2 pretty solid weeks,
Yeah.
and it looks like to be a force to be reckoned with Mostert back there. Those guys are so fast, and they hit that hole and they are gone. So I mean, he's had limited practice time. I know he knows the offensive system from being in San Francisco, but I really want to see what he can do after 2 weeks of practice with the bye week, and then coming back in there on that week of rest.
Yeah, Miami, my gosh, their offense it just looks more and more impressive week after week, and they didn't even have to do it with Waddle or Tyreek this time. You know, it's insane, like how many ways that they can actually beat you right now. And it really, I have to give credit. It's all starting with Tua. It's starting with Tua being able to make good decisions and basically, I mean, like he's gonna underthrow Tyreek. He's gonna underthrow Tyreek from time to time. I mean, he's the fastest guy in the field. Like it's gonna happen from time to time. But it's, that doesn't matter because ultimately he's making good first down reads to Jalen Waddle to get him the first down and yards after catch. He's getting him in the right spot that they can get all that yardage after catch, and ultimately now he's got a really solid run game. Mostert was really doing a great job with it now, and now it's a 1-2 punch. I feel like Jeff Wilson probably being the head of that. But again, like you said, Mostert has that home run ability. Mostert has that speed and that home run ability. He's so fast that ultimately you have to pick who you're losing a race to, and that's I think what the offense is built as. We're gonna race. We're gonna race 2-3 guys, and you have to race all 3 of them separately, and we're gonna see which one you lose. Maybe you won't lose 1 or 2, but you'll probably lose one of them, and we're gonna figure that out. And it's really exciting to watch.
Yeah, crazy stat about Waddle and Hill right now. Going into week 10, Waddle and Hill both individually had more receiving yards than all of the Ravens wide receivers combined.
I wish I could say that was difficult right now. I really do, Joe. Does that include Andrews too?
No, but I think it was.
Thank goodness for that. At least
I think it was like 800 yards or something. And Hill's already past 1,000, right?
Fastest to 1,000 in a season so far.
And then I think Waddle was like high 8s or something.
He's pretty close. Yeah, I don't know what it is off the top.
It's insane. So I mean, I think Tua has shown that he can be the real deal with the weapons around him.
Yeah, and you know what? I also think that this year in general for fantasy has shown us that if you just put a little more confidence behind your quarterback, like general just any kind of move that's going to give them confidence to feel like they're set up for success, they're going to take it and run with it, and they're going to take ownership of it. I don't think Jalen Hurts is doing the same thing that he's doing right now if they don't sign AJ Brown, if they just say they draft Treylon Burks, right? Say they draft Treylon Burks instead of taking AJ Brown. This isn't happening. I don't think it's happening. I don't think we're talking about the quality of quarterback play that Jalen Hurts is even having here. But when you put him with a guy that he has great chemistry with in the beginning, one of his best friends in AJ Brown, you've got a guy like Devontae Smith on the other side, that chemistry, that idea that, I have familiarity with the players that I know what they like. I know where to throw them the ball. That's a huge thing. And you know what? Tua and Waddle have it. Not as much with Tyreek, but Tyreek, you can.
He's a special specimen.
He's a special, exactly. He is completely different story. But you got the confidence in Waddle there. You've got Tyreek Hill, a superstar who's going to give you a mismatch anytime he's on the field, and then you have a solid running game that allows that to all stir the drink together. So I think really what we're looking at, and while we're sort of evaluating a post Josh Allen a rise like that Josh Allen's had over the past few years, where we weren't quite sure where it came from, it started with Stephon Diggs, right? It started with getting them those receivers. Joe Burrow, it started more with Jamar Chase. It starts, Cousins. It started with Jefferson. It hasn't. That's not true. I shouldn't go that far. He was doing great stuff with Thielen and Diggs before that. But either way, it's the confidence of knowing, like, I have a few players that I know I can always go to them in tough spots. And sometimes that's enough to give your quarterback confidence to do a number of things that you didn't think was actually possible in the first place. Let's move right along. One other guy, actually, before we go, one other guy that I'm really excited to see out, because he's been, and I've been sort of dubious on him the past few months here. But Trevor Lawrence, I think, is actually playing better. He's starting to turn it around. It's not quite the way he doesn't look quite as frazzled. And he looks like more in control. Even in that Kansas City game, they were obviously losing, and I don't think they were ever going to get to the point where they were in competition. And I understand all that, but at the very least, there was poise that you saw from Trevor Lawrence that you haven't seen in weeks previous. So I'm really hoping that they've slowly, especially with ETN coming back, that's been a big help for him, and I think that's been, again, a confidence booster that's allowed him to that he's been building on slowly throughout the year. I want to see now, after the bye, if they can incorporate that where they can get everything clicking with the way Kirk was being used at the beginning of the year. Bringing ETN with what he's been doing over the past few weeks. Obviously, he's still a home run hitter. You're going to have to deal with your booms and busts sometimes with him. But ultimately, they have built a pretty decent offense around him. And I think he's starting to show signs of life. He's not completely dead yet. We just revived Justin Fields a few weeks ago. I think Trevor Lawrence, why not see what he looks like throughout the rest of this year. And before we move on, we're going to move on to our fantasy favorite games here. But we are going to have a DraftKings contest, Shuey. You're going to be setting up a DraftKings with us later on this week or sometime
every Friday or Saturday. I put out the Shoe and Shuey Showdown. It is a $3 buy-in on DraftKings. Pick your team for the Sunday slate. Top 3 scorers will win some type of prize depending on how many people join. We've been getting around 10 to 15 people each week. Would love to get that number up even higher. Forgot to run it this week because I was busy, but definitely will get my reminder next week, and we're going to get rolling again.
It happens, and hey, we're excited to be back this week. So be on lookout for that later on down the week. Make sure you're subscribing to Primetime, following Joe and I on Primetime Mock on Twitter, Joe at Shuey_FF. And let's move right into our fantasy favorites. Okay, so what we're doing here, we're just picking our games that we're targeting for fantasy right now. Games we like, think that are going to hit the over, think they have high implied point totals, and just general teams that we like. There are obviously a few that are pretty obvious, and then as we get further down the list, we're just going to sort of go with ours. But we're going to go 5-1. Right now, we both have the same honorable mentions, so we'll just throw them out there right now. Detroit is going to New York to take on the Giants. That over-under, I believe, is 46.5 last time I checked. It's one that could go kind of either way for me. If they play into the Giants' hands, I think it's going to be a lower scoring game than we might expect. So I don't have it as one of my favorites. I'm sort of keeping it honorable mention. I have some actual lower over-under totals in my top 5 over this game. But it is worth taking. The pieces have been good. I still, the split now with DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, if it weren't for a touchdown, I would just be so frustrated with that backfield. So it's hard for me to want to jump in there. Amon-Ra, you're obviously playing, but Jared Goff, I don't know if I'm as big of... I think I'm more interested in the Giants pieces than I am the Detroit pieces in this game. And then Cleveland at Buffalo. We know that Buffalo is going to be a wagon. You're starting all your Bills. I even like Isaiah McKenzie getting back into it. He looked like he's been upping his participation for the team. So I like McKenzie going up here. Cleveland. You've seen some signs of life from Donovan Peoples-Jones.
I was getting ready to say if you have a deeper league, he is a sneaky flex play right now. He's going to be boom or bust.
And with Deshaun Watson coming back, a little elevated quarterback play, you might see a nice second half from him. I think Amari Cooper has just been having a really interesting year. His home road splits have been off like unbelievably crazy.
Didn't he have crazy splits like that with Dallas too?
He's overall he's been a volatile player. He's like the definition of boom bust. He's just like, I don't even know. I remember when he was in Oakland.
Oakland?
I think it was still Oakland at the time.
Right.
When he was in Oakland, and the first game he comes out and they throw like they throw 3 end zone targets his way. He doesn't catch any one of them, and his utilization is there. It's just he's always been a volatile scorer, right? It's always been that way. Home road splits are often pretty skewed, but yeah, his are pretty insane right now. If you happen to look at those point totals, I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head right now, but he's been having a rough home road. I think ultimately he's gonna find a game. He's gonna do what he does every year, and he's gonna have a game that everyone benches him, and he's gonna come back and he's gonna explode. Or, it's why I don't draft a lot of Amari Cooper, to be honest. All right, so moving on now. Those were our honorable mentions. Let's go 5-1 right now. It looks like our 4 and 5 are pretty much the same. So number 5, we're going to say Philadelphia is going to Indianapolis, and they are favored 7.5, and the over/under is 44.5. Jeff Saturday, with Matt Ryan coming back in, the team seemed a little more up to play. I still think the Eagles are going to crush this, and we'll talk about our best bets a little later on. I wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Here come the Eagles. But right now, I still think that they'll at least play that. I don't know if you want to call them an offensive juggernaut, but I think ultimately they've got a lot of pieces. Matt Ryan's going to be a competent quarterback, and they're going to be playing throughout this game. So I kind of like if you want to throw a flex here and there. I know it's the Eagles, and I know it's a tough defense. But we just saw some signs of life in Jonathan Taylor. His usage has gotten crazy high now with Saturday, even though he was participating and getting the majority of the carries before. But it looks like they're focusing and using him in a more productive way here. So you saw Paris Candles score a touchdown. You saw Matt Ryan at least be able to run the offense a little more competently. And honestly, the line hasn't moved. The line moved a bunch. And came down. I believe it was closer to 9 earlier this morning. It's already come down to 7.5. So people are betting the Colts, which I think is kind of crazy. But I still kind of feel like they're gonna keep it competitive enough that you might get some points out of your guys. What do you think about this one, Joe?
Yeah, no, I think the same thing. I think the other biggest thing for me is I have him in a lot of places. It's Michael Pittman. With Ellinger, he was like getting like 3, 4, 5 targets, and they were like high point targets either. So I think he had 9 targets with Ryan back this week. So I'm hoping with Matt Ryan back in there that Pittman can get some catchable targets and hopefully get in the end zone this week and some garbage time.
Yeah, you probably have to temper your expectations from when you drafted him, obviously. It's probably more along the 2-3 borderline now, but he's going to give you some productive weeks here going forward. So that was my 5. Your 5 is my 4. My 4 is your 5. I think I said that right. So we're going to move on to your 5, my 4. Chicago at Atlanta. The over-under in this one right now is 50. And I think there is going to be plenty of fantasy scoring. It's just, I really feel rough about these teams. Like, if it's not Justin Fields, if it's not Cordero Patterson, it's kind of tough. I think Cole Kmet is probably a good play.
He's alive. I think he's alive. Yeah, especially if he got dropped to your waiver wires and you had Zach Ertz on your team, go pick up Cole Kmet.
He's on my Scott Fishbowl team out of absolute necessity. I was really hurting there for a while with Dalton Schultz out. But he's come back, and I'm feeling pretty good about Cole Kmet. I think it's pretty easy target distribution from the Bears. You're looking at Fields, you're looking at Kmet, you're looking at Mooney. It seems like Khalil Herbert might be a little bit hurt, and so I think you might feel better about playing David Montgomery. I've never been a huge David Montgomery fan, but I think that's where you're going there. If you got him, you're starting him probably. And on the other side, you're looking at Atlanta. I'm looking at Cordero Patterson. We saw signs of life with Drake London this past week. It's kind of tough because I actually feel like this 50 points is buoyed by one or two of these teams maybe getting a defensive score. That because it's a high line, and obviously these teams put up points and can have been able to hang so far. Their defenses are atrocious, but there's also a lot of bad decisions. if we've seen anything from Marcus Mariota this past week, it's bad decision making. We saw that with that pass on Thursday night where he's completely on the ground, tossing it straight up into the air. And Justin Fields also has thrown a pick six this past week against the Lions. So fantasy wise, great. Start Justin Fields, do it. But I think ultimately we might see a defensive score or something that might be buoying this up above 50. I'm a little less interested in unless you have those clear-cut guys, I wouldn't be chasing flexes, on Atlanta or spot starts like that. They're kind of guys that if you got the guys that Patterson, Mooney, Kmet, Fields, Montgomery, I think you're good there. But I probably wouldn't be wavering too far outside of that. Maybe Drake London if you need to start Kyle Pitts. I don't even think I can, but if you need to start Kyle Pitts, I guess this wouldn't be the worst. Wouldn't be the worst spot. The Bears' defense is atrocious, and maybe you get a defensive score out of one of these teams. So in your DFS lineups where these defenses are really cheap, maybe throw one of them in there. I always love finding the cheapest defense I can to get a few more points on my DraftKings lineup.
Before you jump over, Mark, got some breaking news that Kupp's initial x-rays were negative, so he's looking at a high ankle sprain and not a serious fracture or break.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so then we're thinking if it's they said a high ankle sprain?
Yeah, so it says he will miss some time, but that is still to be determined, and I think that's going to be still going to be based on how that team is looking in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and again, 4 weeks, we look at a high ankle sprain, we think 4 weeks. I know Jonathan Taylor did it a little earlier, but he probably shouldn't have because he ended up going back out and dealing with it anyway. So if we're looking at 4 weeks before he's useful again, he's got to be dropped, right? That's week. That's the start of your fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, it depends on where you're sitting. If you have the bench depth, I would hold it. If you have a very small bench, I would consider dropping it.
Yeah, I would say if you need the start, from somebody and Kupp is sitting there, it's going to be really tough for me. This is it's good I don't have him because I'd probably be the one still keeping him, but I think the right advice is to say to drop him for right now. I don't think that come back week 14. Are you going to feel comfortable starting him that first week back? Definitely not. Then we're into week 15 so week 14, 11, 12, 13, 14. So week 15, we're not comfortable starting him there. Week 16, we're already into the second round of fantasy playoffs. So I'll probably feel more comfortable starting him there, but are we going to get there? It's tough to say.
I'd rather
if you've got
get there.
Yeah, if you've got the cap, if you've got the seeding in your favor, maybe obviously still hold on to him, but I think if you're desperate, I think it's probably safer than we think that we could probably just cut him. Number 3 on our fantasy favorites, we got San Francisco at Arizona. Where's that line? San Francisco's favored -7.5. Over/under is 44. So this is a lower over/under than some of the others. Again, lower than the Giants total that I was talking about. But at the very least, I like the offensive pieces that are going through. I think we'll probably see Kyler Murray next week. If he was gonna play or was pretty close to playing this past week, you'd have to think that he's gonna end up showing up. I really like how they funneled the targets after Ertz going out. They funneled the targets really to Rondale Moore and Hopkins, and that's a pretty good setup for fantasy for us right now. James Conner has been stirring that drink since he came back last week. Looks great. With Ertz gone, are you interested in speccing Trey McBride right now in a redraft league? In Dynasty, he's probably rostered, but
I don't know. I mean, that tight end in that offense gets a lot of work.
That's kind of my thought. He looked like he was getting work once Ertz was out there.
If you have a deeper bench, absolutely. But if you have a shallow bench, I'm not wasting a spot on a tight end unless I absolutely need it. Yeah.
Ultimately, I think you probably see what he does this week, but it wouldn't be, if you got like a week, I don't know. It's tough to want to put him in now. I think it would be a really tough play, but there is potential. Like if you're really desperate for tight end, I wouldn't hate you throwing him in again in this game, right? I wouldn't hate it. You'd like to see more, but again, he was out there playing and running routes. Seems like the whole second half of that game. So I would be interested to see what it looks like next week, obviously. But other than that, San Francisco, you know the pieces. It's McCaffrey, it's Kittle, it's Ayuk and Debo. Kind of tough if Jimmy Garoppolo does not throw a touchdown for them all to blow up. But I think it's hard also not to start them. Their offense, their team is still going to put up points. They're going to be put in good situations from the defense. And, not every week is Elijah Mitchell going to be pulling away all that extra work. He did look great, I will say that. And I think it's great to keep McCaffrey healthy through the season. Probably not what fantasy managers want to hear. But they're playing for the playoffs. They're not playing for the fantasy season. You just can't, you can't get greedy there. I still ultimately think McCaffrey's going to be an RB1 for you. You're not taking him out of RB1 status. And ultimately, you look at the pass catchers. It's, you have to start Kittle. You're gonna get goose eggs from time to time, or just low participation games from time to time. But ultimately, I like this game. I think it's probably going to be higher scoring than what's leading on. Kyler Murray always seems to have a really nice rushing day in these San Francisco matchups, especially at home. So I'm excited to see him maybe get back after it. And I think that Arizona might surprise them and push them for a few more points than they're used to. So I kind of like this game. If I were I don't have it as a best bet, but I'm leaning the over pretty hard on this one. That's our number 3. Number 2, Dallas at Minnesota. Give me all the Justin Jefferson that you can. I cannot wait to see this matchup. CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson go at it. I think these wide receivers love getting up to play against each other. That's another thing I've noticed is these wide receivers, when you see them swapping jerseys, they treat it like it's soccer. But they love to get up and play for each other more than anything. I think it's just like a sign of respect that you've got another great wide receiver across the field from you. You're going to do your best to show out, and I don't know if CeeDee Lamb's going to give you what he gave you last week if Zeke comes back, but I still think we're going to see some offensive fireworks in this game. Over-under for this one is 47.5. Are you taking the over in this, Joe?
Yes.
You are.
I am.
Okay.
I have it in there as a bet for this week. Not
There
a
we
best
go.
bet, but a bet.
There we go. So I like this one too. I think I might be hitting the over on this one as well. I'm really excited. This is the game. The other part of this is like, let's look at the fantasy games we really want to watch. This is right now the way my 5 is set up is these are the fantasy games I want to watch in order. And so right now Dallas, Minnesota is my number 2, and it's CeeDee Lamb, it's Zeke, it's Pollard, it's Dak. You could start them all. I think this is going to be a high-scoring affair. And I expect, we'll get to my best bets too in a minute. I expect Minnesota to come out and win this again. Ultimately, I think they still are getting that, oh, well, Josh Allen was kind of hurt, I think they're for real. I really do. And I think they're going to show it here. And on top of it, this feels like Dallas, right? This feels like what happens to Dallas every year. We get close to the end here, and it just becomes like they lose games they probably should have won that they had in hand, or and they start to make mistakes, and eventually the wheels kind of fall off, and they make the playoffs and get bounced in the first round. I think this is like that first sign. It might not be all the way there yet, but I think this is going to be a tough matchup in Minnesota. I really want to see how Dallas bounces back here, because if not, it might be on its way. I
can't believe they lost that game against Green
I can't
Bay.
believe they did either, but I also can absolutely believe they lost that game.
I saw the funniest TikTok. It was this little kid whose parents were Packers fans. He goes, "The Packers are garbage," and then they showed it like later in the game. He goes, "The Packers are back." The kid's like 3 feet tall.
You gotta send it to me.
I'll send you the link.
All right, we talked enough about Minnesota and Justin Jefferson. I think you know who you're starting there. Dalvin Cook, that beast of a run too. At home, I like Adam Thielen. I think he's always a pretty decent flex play to throw in, especially when they're at home. And always seems to, he might not get you a ton of points, as much anymore, to keep his fantasy floor up. But when he's at home, he's usually good for a couple targets in the end zone, and that's pretty much enough. All you need for a flex play. All right, moving on. KC at Los Angeles. KC is favored. They're 6.5-point favorites, I think, right now. Over under, another 50-point over under. We're implying there again over 6 scores, and I mean, can you blame them with Mahomes? I mean, all these guys are. You're hoping that maybe Justin Herbert gets 1 or 2 of his guys back. Maybe he gets Keenan Allen back. We're hoping that's the case. I still think it's probably another couple weeks before Mike Williams ends up playing. But even still, DeAndre Carter playing out of his mind. Not sure what's happening with Josh Palmer. I've never been as big of a fan of Josh Palmer, but he's still going to probably put up games. I hope he has a nice bounce back here. Gerald Everett got hurt, so I'm kind of feeling like we're going to get a ton of Eckler, obviously. Mm-hmm. We're going to get a ton of Carter. We're still going to get plenty of Josh Palmer. I think Trey McKitty, they've been trying to get him out there, but he's not been looking great. Maybe you get a little more Michael Bandy in this game. I don't know if I want to start Michael Bandy, but in a deep league, I could see him being a flex play that they end up targeting and use. He ends up having some production there in this game here. Any other players you want to target in this game? I mean, we know the definite starts.
I'm pretty much starting anyone that's starting for either of those teams in this game. They're in the lineups.
Kadarius Toney, how do we feel about him? He looks great, but
if Juju doesn't play, then I think you got to give Tony a shot in your lineups this week. Yeah, that'll be the biggest factor for me.
I think so too, and also Sky Moore hasn't seen much of an uptick here
Sky Moore
after the bye.
Wasted first round dynasty pick in my opinion at this moment.
Yeah, right now it's not looking great for him when you trade for Tony and Tony comes back through and is already sort of past you on the depth chart. That's not looking great. All right, so those are our fantasy favorites. Philly at Indy, Chicago at Atlanta, San Francisco at Arizona, Dallas at Minnesota, and KC at Los Angeles Chargers. Obviously, the higher up, closer to 1 you are, the better there is. So break some of those ties for your fantasy flexes and extra plays for some of these fantasy favorites for us right here. Before we move on, I've got some of the lowest over-unders of the week. I'm just going to read them off real quick. Las Vegas at Denver, 41.5. Cincinnati at Pittsburgh, 40. Washington at Houston, 40.5. Los Angeles Rams at New Orleans Saints, that's 39.5. New York Jets at New England, that's 38.5. Of all these 5 games, is there any one that you can really see hitting over 40? Like, what's the one that you think is most likely? For me, it's Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. But
I was going to say Rams Saints if Stafford plays, but I don't know. I don't know what Saints team we're going to get. That's the question. I honestly, maybe Washington, Houston. I don't know. I wouldn't touch any of these to hit the over.
Yeah, neither would I, and we're kind of pointing that out because again, all these 41.5 is the highest over under. It's tough for us to really see any of these games going over 40. I mean, Las Vegas at Denver is the highest, and again, Russ can't put up 18 right now, and Derek Carr is crying in the locker room after his last game against Jeff Saturday. So it's not looking great. I don't see them going on the road playing Denver and having this huge offensive output. I think if anything, Denver shuts him down and Russell does what he does, which is, again, put up probably like 13 points. So all these games I'd kind of avoid. There's a few guys in Cincinnati and Pitt. There's going to be a few guys you have to play, right? but it's tough for me to see any of these really going over 40. I think the best shot is Cincinnati Pitt. I think there is the only one with the outside chance of it being a shootout is Cincinnati Pitt. I can see Jamar Chase if he comes back, putting up points. I can see them Burrow just coming off the bye, wanting to win, putting up a strong first half, and Pittsburgh coming back and having to throw to get them there. And ultimately, as much as they're not a winning team, Pittsburgh has slowly found their way to being a competent offense with Kenny Pickett. I mean, he's not amazing, but he's getting there. He's improving, and it's something that they can build off next year for sure. And it's hard for me not want to play George Pickens. I love that dude.
Right.
All right. So yeah, those 5: Las Vegas at Denver, Cincy at Pitt, Washington at Houston, Rams at New Orleans, and Jets at New England. Break ties against those teams if you have them there. That would be my bet here. All right, we're rolling into our stream team. This is our Shuey. Last week, I just edged Shuey out by 2 points, 52.3 to 48.7. Or no. Yeah, 48 point something.
You won. That's all that matters.
I won. That's all that matters. That's right. And I'm not going to dunk on you about it or anything. Hey, but we got a new one this week. 6 teams, $60. Blind bidding. We had a little issue today. Little hiccup today, but that's all right. We've got it going. I think it's working now, so we're feeling pretty good. Let's go through our teams. At quarterback, I'm starting with Taylor Heineke against Houston. I think he's gonna get rough. He's probably gonna have a rough go of it here in Philly. And heading to Houston, I think it's just going to be a much nicer game for him to sort of go at. I think they're going to have a much more competitive atmosphere that's going to sort of allow for fantasy points for Heineke to be successful. So I like Heineke as my quarterback. Honestly, it is before we go and before you give yours, it's a rough week for quarterback under 40%. That's the other thing. We're picking players under 40%. And it's a tough one to go through. Who did you end up with?
I ended up with Kenny Pickett. I think Pickett's been each week he's progressively gotten better with moving the ball and getting this offense moving down the field. He has the threat of punching in at the goal line and inside the 5. He's got that little bit of rushing upside there. And my other options were I can't.
They're all in the fan. They're all in the low end of over-under games. You got Davis Mills. You've got Taylor Heineke.
I was between Mills, Pickett, and Tannehill. And I went with the rushing upside of Pickett and hoping that he can sneak a touchdown or 2 in there and get some points.
Yeah, I like Pickett there. I think Tannehill was also not a horrible play. Not the best play, but he is, of all the players in all the games that we have, theirs has the highest over-under at 42. Not that impressive, but we move on. Running back, I spent the bag. I put it down I think it's $36 I spent on Isaiah Pacheco. And you decided to hedge against me and go with Jerick McKinnon, which I really like the play. Ultimately, I think Pacheco is the guy you want out of the 2, but both of these backs, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of the picture, it makes both of them just way more valuable in general. I really I used McKinnon last week, got me 10 points in our little stream team here. So I like that play for both of us. Honestly, running back Kansas City Chiefs, they're both getting most of the usage. If one of them gets hurt, they're both probably getting a huge uptick. I don't see CEH coming back and getting anything close to what he used to get if one of these guys get hurt. I'm actually more confident that Ronald Jones would maybe get more run if that happens, because I think at this point they're saying CEH it's over, right? It's pretty much over for him. So yeah, I sort of tipped your RB, but I like both of those running backs we did. Yours much cheaper. I think you ended up getting yours for $1. So I spent $36 on Pacheco. He got McKinnon for $1.
I think that's everybody here for $1.
Well, yeah, next week we'll adjust the bidding. Yeah, I might have set the bid day time a little earlier than Joe was ready for today. My fault on that. But I actually think this makes a
But
good point for Jerick McKinnon. Nobody's going after him. Nobody.
and I will also yeah, no, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
And I was going to say that with these rosters that we put together, that we went back through, and the only person I would have outbid you on is our tight end here. So all of your players are in fairness to your squad.
Yes. So yeah, I bid all up. So I ended up getting Christian Watson, who I spent $20 on in our 60, out of that $60 budget. So I ended up emptying almost the whole clip on mine. But I still like what you ended up getting. Paris Campbell, I like you getting wide receiver. Let's talk about Christian Watson though. Had 3 touchdowns in the Green Bay game. Is this guy like are we emptying the clip on Christian Watson here if you need a wide receiver?
Absolutely. I mean, I think he is that guy on the waiver wire, if he's still there, that you're absolutely going after this week. I think he had 8 targets, only had the 4 catches, had 3 touchdowns on those 4 catches, like you said. But I think that he's slowly getting Rodgers' trust and confidence, and I think that Aaron Rodgers is that guy. He likes to force feed somebody the ball, and Christian Watson is a freak of an athlete, and I think that Rodgers is going to continue peppering him with targets and getting him the ball because he is the best playmaker on the field with the ball in his hands at this point for the Packers.
He's their only hope, really, at this point. Like, really, he's their only hope after. I mean, Alan Lazard's been a good receiver. I'm not gonna like he's played well this year, and he's played well in the past couple of years for Aaron Rodgers. But he is not a number 1 guy. He just can't be. It doesn't work when all the attention is going to Alan Lazard because ultimately Alan Lazard is the guy that all the attention goes away from, and that's how he ends up making most of his hay.
And the big thing about with Lazard too is the only reason like Lazard hasn't really like broken out as a wide receiver is because he's a lot better at the line of scrimmage than everybody on this team. When they're funneling the ball through Dylan and Aaron Jones, like Alan Lazard is their primary blocking receiver, and he does an exceptional job at it. So when he's lined up and going down the field, they know he's going out for a pass, but if he's staying close, they know they're running the ball. So
Absolutely, yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. He's always been a pretty good blocker, and that's what gets him on the field in the first place.
yep.
Honestly, I would not be surprised if all the yardage totals that he gets is all just gravy for the Packers. They could care less if he catches any passes. It's what he does in the blocking game that really makes him valuable. Paris Campbell, we talked about it a few minutes ago in our fantasy favorites. Not a horrible flex play going into this game. I know it's against the Eagles, but he's probably going to get that secondary attention, and the Eagles secondary has been good, but they have been known to give up a play or two here. So you ended up getting Foster Moreau on me. Spent up $10 on Foster Moreau. I'm gonna end up going with Juwan Jennings, not Juwan Jennings.
Johnson, yeah,
Johnson.
He was my backup option.
I think outside of Joe, outside of these, I think really those two are really
yeah. They were the only ones that I wanted to touch on there, and that's why I went up on Foster, just because with Waller out, he is the number 1 tight end there, and Carr likes to throw the tight end a little bit, so definitely the guy on the tight end market if you need to stream on this week.
And I like to see that you picked up Nico Collins. He was a guy that I was also. He's like the second to last guy that didn't make the my waivers. I have Isaiah McKenzie in my flex. You got Nico Collins. I was just favoring the Bills. Really, it's you got a piece on the Bills. Like the fantasy game a lot more than a little higher up. So I'll break the tie for McKenzie here over Nico, and that's that. But I like Nico Collins as well. There was a moment there where I thought if I was going to end up getting Davis Mills, I thought I'll stack him with Nico. That might do me something. But Isaiah McKenzie has there was a time where Khalil Shakir was getting a little time tapping into his workload. Looks like after the bye, he's been a little more solidified in his role, which you like to see. Shakir is not that high up. His capital is not that high that it dictates he's a huge part of this team this year, especially when they have Super Bowl aspirations. So I kind of like McKenzie as the veteran there, and I think he'll be good going forward. I think, but even today in this spot start, I like him. And then finally, defenses. I ended up with the Steelers facing the Bengals. Steelers at home, just got TJ Watt back. The defense actually looked really good against New Orleans. I don't know if New Orleans is that big of a threat, but you got another game here against the division opponent in the Bengals. Joe Burrow's line, you hope that they figured it out after the bye, but defense has been able to get after him and sack him, and in these division games, wouldn't be surprised if you get a couple picks here as well or fumbles. So I like the Steelers. They've had 2 good weeks going forward. And what do you got, Joe?
I've got the Denver defense against Las Vegas here. I mean, Las Vegas's offense has been hit or miss from week to week. Denver's not scoring a lot, but they're also not giving up a lot of points. They're getting sacks, causing some turnovers, and from a fantasy perspective, that's what you look for in a defense. You want a team that can get their sacks, get to the quarterback, and hopefully get some type of sack fumble to take back for a touchdown or get some type of fluky touchdown to give you some points. So I'm going to take Denver here, even though they haven't been amazing this year. They've been putting up consistent points with their defensive scoring.
Yeah, the thing that I like here about Denver is really Vegas's Josh Jacobs has been good too. I'm not gonna front there, but Denver, I feel way more confident in them shutting down Devontae Adams, and with that, I think they can probably play with a little leverage and an advantage that allows them to get behind, put Las Vegas in a negative game script that allows them to throw a little more and get those sacks and turnovers like you're talking about. With the Steelers, what you're risking is a high scoring game. What I'm saying is, the game is high scoring, but I know the sacks are going to come at the very least. So that's kind of where I'm willing to let it go. But it is a little bit of a risk. I just like the way Steelers have been playing right now, so I'm willing to roll with them again. So that was it. Again, I had Heineke, Pacheco, Christian Watson, Juwan Johnson. I'm going to do that every time. Isaiah McKenzie and the Steelers. And Joe, why don't you run your team down too?
I've got Mr. Kenny Pickett, Jerick McKinnon, Paris Campbell, Foster Moreau, Nico Collins, and the Denver Broncos defense.
All right, we appreciate you. You know what? Before we go, we got our best bets. We're running a little late here. We appreciate you all. Got a little new format going now, so we're changing it up, and from here we're gonna tighten it up. So next week we're gonna try and we'll get this all in before the game kicks off here. But let's give our quick best bets. One of my first ones, talking about Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. Number 5, I've got Pitt +5 at home. I think you got my point here. I don't necessarily think Jamar Chase is coming back this week, even though he wants to. And with that, I think this will probably be a low-scoring game. And 5 is a lot when you have these tough divisional matchups. So I'm willing to take Pitt at home, getting 5. What's your 5th best bet?
So my number 5 bet is Detroit at the Giants. I am taking the Giants at 3.5-point favorites. The Giants have looked good. They're controlling the clock, running the ball. They've been doing just enough to win some games by a touchdown to 10 points here. So I'm going to take the Giants at home against Detroit, and hopefully Detroit puts up a typical Detroit game.
And actually, it's moved to 3. So
even better.
Even better. Actually, that one, I'm going to put that one now in my honorable mentions here. I was a little worried about the 3.5. But 3, it's a lot easier for me to take.
Yeah, I like that. And then I think for the next 4, Mark, we are synced up on 4.
Whoa! I just saw that. We are simpatico. So let's go right down.
Synced up.
Wow. All right. So let's hit it then. Number 4, we've got Tennessee at Green Bay under 43.5. I actually think this might be a rushing duel when all is said and done. And I think this might be the game we start to see a little more AJ Dillon. Not that Aaron Jones hasn't been great, but I think this is a kind of game that plays to to an advantage with a guy like Dillon. So Tennessee's run defense has been kind of banged up. They're missing like four. I think like four. They're seven of their front. Four of their front seven. That's what I'm trying to say. And or at least have been banged up. So I'm willing to take this as an under. I think ultimately, if it's a rushing duel, I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to get 3 touchdowns out of Christian Watson again. And I see this game going like 17-14.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really low-scoring game. I mean, Tennessee doesn't put a whole lot of points up on the board. They're running the ball a lot, trying to control the clock. And like you say, Green Bay, they're going to be at home. They're going to want to control the clock as well here. They don't want to get in a big shootout game like they did against Dallas this week. So I think we see Green Bay going to one of those games where we see Aaron Jones drop like 30 fantasy points for us.
Yeah, I'm right in line with that. And this is why we're matched up on all these picks, Joe. Number 3, Philly at Indy. We got Philly laying 7.5. Oh my goodness, that is just way too low. I will take that 7.5 running away. Yes, smash indeed. I get that Jeff Saturday won them a game, but my goodness, this is such an undervalued.
There should be a weekly contest for picking some guy off the couch to face Josh McDaniels every week and see what the Raiders record is. That was the best meme I saw all weekend.
Where with Saturday's tweet?
And then it was McDaniels was like, there's a picture of McDaniels like, and then it was Saturday's tweet, and then someone else put a caption, and they're like, let's do a contest where someone just gets up off their couch, just some random average schmuck comes in and faces Josh McDaniels and makes his record even worse.
Yeah, there's a tweet from I think it's Halloween from Jeff Saturday that said Vegas looks horrible. Basically, Las Vegas looks horrible, and the next week he's coaching them and he shows them that they're horrible. which is funny. I think everybody had like a different feeling of Jeff Saturday going in. I don't know if that mood has changed, but at the very least, I think in the locker room they probably feel a little better about it. But not enough for me to go against the Eagles here. Minus 7.5. I think that's a pretty solid best bet at number 3. Number 2, both of us, Dallas at Minnesota, and we're taking Minnesota plus 1.5. Just like I said, I think this is where the cracks start to show in Dallas. And when you have a team that's run by Jerry Jones, and it's very clear that it's run by Jerry Jones, even from way up in his owner's box, these things start to happen, at the end of the season, because ultimately you don't empower your coach to make the decisions that he needs to make the adjustment. And so we're already getting, Zeke's going to be running, Zeke's going to be toting the rock as much as he can here going forward. Not that I think that's a bad thing or anything, but it's just tough for me. I think this is like right now, I think their ego is kind of bruised a little bit, and I want to see them come up from it. Right now, Minnesota is they've got some swag on them, this Minnesota team, with dorky Kirk Cousins, but I mean they've definitely got an edge to them right now. They've got this, everybody's against us sort of mentality, and Dallas is just trying to get its way to the playoffs, and sort of figure out, what went wrong this past week. I don't think they're going to get it on the road in Minnesota. I think that Minnesota defense, that Minnesota fan base is going to be fired up, ready to go here. And I could see Dak Prescott throwing a few picks. I can see this game getting out of hand. I think it will probably be close, but 1.5 is enough. I'd probably take Minnesota money line here, if based on the odds.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely Minnesota here at plus 1.5. I think that Minnesota should win this game. I think that them being underdogs at home after coming off beating the Bills in Buffalo, that is just an absolutely absurd line right now.
Yeah. And speaking of absurd lines, we're going Vegas to Denver, 41.5. I was really surprised that this was over 40 at all. I thought this would be like 39, and a half or like 39 even. I don't know how you can give Russell that benefit of the doubt that he's just going to put like their implied total. Hold on, let me go back to their implied total right now. So Denver is favored -2.5. Their implied total is 22 points. How are they getting 22 points?
Are they thinking Vegas is that bad?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's a tough one for me.
Denver can't move the ball at all right now.
Yeah, they can't move it at all. I mean, the touchdown to oh my god, what was that guy's name? Verger that he threw a touchdown to this week.
Yeah,
was a busted coverage. The defender fell down, and so maybe you get one of those, and that's fine. There will be a touchdown hopefully scored in this game, but you're giving Vegas 20, you're giving Denver 22. How are we getting there? That's all I want to know is how are we getting there? I think the line -2.5 is right. I think that's probably close. I would probably lean Vegas, but God, this feels like a 14-7 game. It feels like a 10-14 game. You know,
Where is this Denver game? It's
in Denver.
Yeah, I'm looking for the game, the box score from last week. Let's see, play by play. The first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 possessions were punts in that game, and the longest drive was 35 yards.
Yeah, I don't have it right here, but I would imagine that Denver has spent the most time or has the most snaps coming in their own end of any team. Basically their majority or their ratio of snaps, I would bet they have more snaps, more plays in their own end than they do in the opposing end. By far, basically the ratio would be further for Denver than anybody else in the league. It's impossible. It feels like for them to get out of their own end sometimes, and that's with Russell or with Brett Rippon. It's just been rough. So I would love to see Russ turn it around, and I really hope that like next year he just comes back and has they just sort of like drop it all and try something new and maybe just, he gets another year where he's a little more integrated into this team. But man, does it look bad right now. I can't put it on either of these teams to put up 3 scores. I can't. Even if I give them both even if I give the Denver a defensive touchdown, I can't. It's tough. So best bet under 41.5. I imagine that's going to go down pretty quickly. I imagine by the time we get to Saturday, it'll be like
Take
30
it now.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's been a little longer than we wanted to. Again, got a new format going on here. We're gonna tighten it up for you in the next couple weeks. But I actually like the way this sets up. We'll play around with it a little more. Make sure you're subscribed to Primetime. Follow Joe, follow myself. And if you are making bets, make sure you're doing it inside your means. We're only really making bets for fun inside of our means. And if you have a gambling problem, please make sure you're seeking help in the state that you're in. What do we think, Joe, this game tonight? Eagles -11. We're feeling pretty good about it.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not something to be happy about or excited about, but I think it's within reason.
Well, Eagles are already up 7, so it's looking like it's going that way already. All right, have a great weekend, have a great week, everybody. We might try to get something out here on Thursdays. We've been slowly trying to move on to doing a Thursday night thing here too, where we can sort of pregame the Monday, pregame the Thursday, and just talk a little fantasy as you get ready to watch these games. Other than that, we'll try and catch you on Thursday if we do. If not, we'll see you next Monday with more best bets, more waiver, more Shuey Shueys, and have a good one, everybody.
See ya.